I noticed that PMBC's not on there.
Oh, you got that.
Just had their own agenda item?
No, we should invite PMBC.
Oh, that's right. Oh, yeah, you're right.
Good evening and
Excited
welcome
to
to
you,
the extended Board of Selectmen meeting, which is now turned over, I guess, to the Finance Committee meeting. And the two main agenda items are joint meeting,
Hey, I'll get to care.
Hey, guys.
up back, move, either leave or quiet down, please.
Only two options.
Okay.
Very tactful, Fred.
It's late.
Direct.
Okay, the agenda this evening, there are two main items. Joint meeting with the Library Trustees, Finance Committee, and Board of Selectmen. Library Trustees warrant article, a new library design funding. And second major item is joint meeting with School Committee, Finance Committee, and Selectmen. A brief discussion on operating budget. We barely have a quorum, so we probably won't take any big votes tonight. And then we'll talk about the capital budget. So with no further ado, if the library trustees want to present.
Mark Rambacher representing the trustees. Demetra apologizes for not making it, but she's got a medical problem she's dealing with. And, so basically, we had this presentation I think was sent to you. Our plan is to go forward in May with asking for $1.5 million for the, to take us out to basically construction bid plans. The $1.5 million number comes from the cost estimate we had submitted to the state with the grant application. The $13.1 million, the 1.5 covers the design portions. We're not sure exactly what the design number will be. It's somewhere between 1.3 and 1.6. We're going to work with PMBC to figure out what the number actually should be. So we're asking for the $1.5 million in May for that project. We fully expect we'll have the grant awarded by the state in July. After the grant is awarded, we have to ask for the remaining town portions of the funds within 6 months or at the next town meeting after July. So in October, we would be asking for the remaining set of funds.
Okay. And the excuse me, the grant is fixed. It's not a percentage.
The grant is fixed.
So it's a fixed 5.9?
It's 5.8 million.
5.8?
Yes. So when we, the number for the library that we have in the cost estimate is $13.1 million in 2020 numbers. When we go through this design process in October, we'll firm up what that 13.1 number is in today's number, right? Because they figured in all the inflation, but who knows if that was actually correct.
Right.
You know, the price of steel might be different. So we get 5.8 from the state. It's payable 20% a year over the 5 years. You have certain milestones you have to meet. I don't know exactly what those milestones are, but they pay it out over 5 years. In that $13.1 million, there was also another $100,000 for acquiring the land, right? So we don't actually have to do that. We already own the land, so it's really 13. There's also, we get, if we have built a LEED certified building, we'll get another between $100,000 and $200,000, I think, for building a LEED building. We're actively fundraising. We have about $460,000 in cash right now, and I think about another $180,000 in pledged monies that we can start collecting once October hits, basically. Once the library is approved, people have pledged money contingent on the library going forward.
Okay.
So if you break down the 13.1 and subtract all these other things, if it, in October, we'd be asking for roughly $4.5 million was what the town would have to borrow. If you take the 5.8 minus the 1.5 we're asking now, minus $1 million in fundraising, the outstanding balance is about 4.5. roughly.
But in actuality, we have to ask for the full 13.
So you have to bond the full 13, right? But the town share that they would be paying would be 4.5, plus the 1.5 we're doing. In October, you would be funding another 4.5 effectively, from what we already are.
So in October, you're going to have a construction budget.
Yes.
Which means you have to have construction documents. And to wait until Maytown meeting to start that process is kind of setting yourself up for failure. Do you have any plans to initiate any of that process earlier?
Right, so we've been talking very recently that, looking over so the town signed a space needs contract with LLB, and they are able to do this. We also look back at our Johnson and Roberts contract, and we can actually, Johnson and Roberts are the ones that designed the schematics, what we have currently. We can extend the contract to them for the next phases without going out to bid. So the trustees are going to talk after this meeting about if we want to do that and allocate some money out of the money that we've raised to get going as soon as PMBC can take it up. So,
Okay. And the assumption is that the new library will hook up to either the new sewer system or what?
or the existing sewer system at the high
System
school.
on it.
There, I believe there was no plan for a separate facility.
Okay.
There was, I believe at the time that Johnson and Roberts did it, we were told there was sufficient capacity in the high school. I don't know if that is still true or not.
Okay.
But at the time we did the schematics, that was
Okay.
the assumption and plan. With the building and the fire station alumni field since then, I don't know if that's still true or not.
Okay.
Now, as far as the
We'll need
owner's
to
project
close.
manager is concerned, you have the option to either advertise for a new one or use the one that the town has for the space needs.
Right. So for the OPM, we have no strong preference one way or another, so whatever PMBC, we'll leave it up to PMBC on what they want to do for the OPM, whether they want to use the town one or put it out. I don't know that we had a particularly great relationship with our OPM or not, and I still don't understand what an OPM does versus anyone else, so. It seems like money you're paying for someone to sit there and help, congratulate you on what and tell you what you've done, so,
It's a state requirement.
yes.
That answers it.
Welcome to the world of
Yes,
consultants,
so-
right? We pay a lot of money to consultants, right?
Yes, that's pretty much what it seems like, so,
Although the OPM on the fire department helped us out tremendously with
yes.
the cost savings and keeping the budget in line.
I can see where that might be more helpful when you're actually building rather than when you're
Yeah.
designing.
Yeah.
At the design phase, I don't see what they're contributing, but. So there's also money in the 1.3 for a clerk of the works, there was money allocated in there. I assume that we don't actually need that part of the money
Right.
now, so that's why the 1.3, 1.6 is kind of, we took everything that they said is professional services and the escalators and said, that comes out to about 1.6. We assume we didn't need some of it, which, why we're saying 1.5, and the trustees will allocate money out of what we've raised to get us going.
So how much of the 1.5 are you looking for the town to borrow?
So, so for the 1.5 in May, we're asking not to go to an override, right? However we want to fund it in the, if it comes out of the capital stabilization or however all these other, I don't remember ever going for a design project where we went to an override in the town. So we're asking for the same funding mechanism that we've used in the past, whether it comes out of, the short
Okay,
term or the.
but is the library, are the library trustees planning on spending any of their $450,000 towards
So if you asked me in
the-
a half an hour, I would be able to tell you that, but
that?
my guess is, yes.
Before the finance committee votes, I think we need to know, and selectmen to support it, I think they would want to know that.
So yes, we are going to be spending some money to get us started. our rough guess is if we put in $100,000, we can get started now, right? But I don't know we don't know what the final 1.5 number is until PMBC looks at it a little more. So I would say it's fair to say the number shouldn't exceed 1.5, but it could be less.
To put on my PMBC hat for a
Yeah,
minute,
please do.
once the trustees take a stand and they decide who the architect and the OPM will be, then we'll sit down and get proposals from them, and then we'll come up with a hard number, but 100,000 should cover those services.
Okay.
So.
Okay, but my question is, of the 1.5, how much are the trustees willing to cover
So we're putting up 100 to get us started.
to get you started?
And then we will work with PMBC to figure out if the number now is 1.4 or still 1.5, or if it's some other number.
Okay.
Right, and if it turns out to be, something else, we'll see what we have to
See
put
what-
up.
okay.
So the 1.5 is just a stake in the ground.
Right.
To going forward until, we start the contract negotiation and PMBC looks a little bit more at it. But we'll get, hopefully we'll have a firmer number before publication. I don't expect, I don't know if professional services have went up at the same rate as the rest of inflation, but 1.5 should be, 1.5 should cover it if the cost estimate is correct. Right, so if we're paying 100, then the number would be 1.4, right? And when we did the original schematics, in the grant, we had a grant for, I think that was like 25,000-ish from the state, and the town put up like 40, and then the trustees covered any overruns from that. And I would assume that if we came up with a number from PMBC that said 1.4 and that we put in 100 and the thing came out to, we won't come and ask for more money, the trustees will cover the delta, right, just like we did.
And realistically, our next meeting where we'll probably start voting the articles is the 19th of March, and then the 2nd of April is drop dead date. So will PMBC and library be able to sort of get together in that timeframe?
Well, we're gonna meet on Wednesday.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, good. So you'll have better feedback, or the two of you will have better feedback when we get back together?
Yes.
Okay, great. Okay, any other questions? Don't let us hog the dais here.
Actually, Mark, I don't know if you know the answer to this or not, but the $100,000 to $200,000 that would get back if we build LEED to the LEED certification, what's the incremental costs of building to LEED certification? Maybe it's a question for Steve, I don't know the answer to it.
That's a
Are we
good
gonna
question.
spend
That's a very
$400,000
valid
to get
question.
$200,000?
It's more expensive to go LEED.
Right.
It depends if you go LEED, gold, silver, gold,
Right.
platinum, So we would have to talk to the architect about that. He's got more information on that than we do.
So I think the 13 number figured a LEED building, right, but they didn't figure the grant back in our, but I believe the 13 number was a LEED certified building.
Yeah.
But was it LEED, it wasn't LEED gold, was it LEED gold or silver?
Aluminum. No platinum. I'm not sure.
I don't know.
I'm sure it wasn't platinum.
We'd have to look back.
But to Chuck's point, if we have to spend $1 million to get 200 back, what's the,
It's probably close to a wash.
okay, well, if that's the case, and it's good for the environment, then I guess it makes sense, but I think that's an excellent point, right?
Just keep an eye on it.
Yeah.
Okay. Anything else for libraries? Okay, so hopefully you guys will have circled at least once before the 19th, and then we can.
We will be
we'll have
circling
more
very
of a-
soon. So,
Great.
yeah, and then it'll just be how long it takes to get the contracts and everything else moving, I think, and,
So the contracts are in place.
yeah, well, the
Just have to- You just have to make sure everyone has capacity to start the work now.
yeah, so.
Anything else?
I have one question. Has there any discussion, I'm envisioning this beautiful new building. Are we going to need more people to staff and all those kinds of things? Have those conversations been had yet, at any rate?
So it's going to be a two-story building compared to the three-story building we have now. So right now, it's actually harder to staff the 3 stories. So since it'll be 2 stories, I don't anticipate.
You're not envisioning that necessarily you're going to need, okay. Yeah.
But to Betsy's point, every new building has an operating budget. So that, and we've yet to build a building that hasn't had an incremental operating budget. So as we think about a library, I mean, you guys should be thinking about the operating budget as well as, oh, we've got this fancy new building, as the senior center. It's the same thing. It's going to have
So the cost of
an
electricity
incremental
and heat,
operating
and
budget.
yada, yada, yeah. I don't know if we've done any studies on what that would be, and I don't know that we really can until we have more of an architectural plans on what the building.
Okay. But that definitely should be part of your presentation when you come for the capital.
In October. It's hard to do right now because we
No,
don't.
I understand that,
Yeah.
but don't,
Yep.
people tend to leave that to us.
We will.
That's not the way to do it.
And so where we're at right now is we have the schematics that we presented to the state. We basically start over. We can change anything we want in the building except its size, effectively, right? From now, in fact, once we submitted it to MBLC, they made things like, this room should be here rather than there, and that type of thing, recommendation. So we're going to be going through another round of that process. We have 4 informational sessions coming up, and at that session, those sessions will start that process and get, feedback from the community on what they'd like to see again, and see how we can adjust the building, both interior, exterior, so on and so forth.
Okay.
So,
Mini golf.
yes. Yes, and there's a mini golf fundraiser coming up on March 23rd, so get your tickets.
Got him.
So you're going to have electronic driving range in there.
22nd.
22nd?
22nd and 23rd.
22nd and 23rd.
Okay, so there's the semifinals and then the finals on the 23rd.
Yes.
That's exactly.
It's a senior tour first.
Okay.
The
then
senior
the
tour
ringers come in
first,
on
it's
Saturday.
Friday night.
Any other questions for the library? Okay, well, good luck.
Thank you.
Great, thank you.
Good job, Fred, we're on time.
Okay, the next on the agenda is the capital and operating budget. We had a handout sent out to everybody in the last meeting on capital. And the change that was made, and I honestly can't remember if it was prior to our last meeting or since our last meeting, but the planning board,
Prior to.
Was prior to?
Yeah.
Okay.
the sheets that you have show the planning board asking for a total of 165,000. They dropped that to 24 and actually dropped out one of the projects. The first one is the update to the housing production plan is 12,000. Great Road Corridor Study is 12,000. And the infrastructure within and connections to the common, they've zeroed out. So that's $141,000 of capital
That's exactly what I was gonna say, dude.
that is not on the list. When we talked about it, it wasn't clear whether the 2 major committees had, reviewed the capital. Bonnie basically took a cut at it and said, this is what seems to make sense to me. And whether you guys have had a chance to go back through and say yay or nay, or gee, would like to, twist our number a little bit.
Well, our last meeting, of course, where we first reviewed this was the last meeting we had with you folks last week, so we have not had a subsequent meeting, although, everybody has, their opinions which haven't had a chance to be given voice yet, and also in discussions with Bonnie prior, anything we do on the level of increasing capacity under the levy for any borrowings, essentially without disrupting either financial policies or operating budget proposals, would have to be in competition for dollars here
Right.
too.
Yep.
So that's where these, anything
Right.
along those lines would take
Well,
place.
that's why I brought up the 141. You know,
Yeah.
it isn't just money to go spend, it's money to circle back and say, okay, if you agree with the list, and there's 141 hanging out, do we spend it on something else? Do we, or not?
Yeah, I just, uncomfortable. I think the process probably initially should have been handled differently, where considerations for borrowings and debt should have been in play so that they are not left to
Yep.
get scraps and be tacked on at the end of the list. But these are all well and good proposals, and I invite any member to jump in and defend any one of them, but we haven't ranked them, and we need to
Okay.
do that. Whether the board members want to do that in this session right now, or try to do it scheduled next Monday at our meeting on the 11th, where, Chase and Cindy might be present too. I'd just say we almost want to reserve what our recommendations might be on that until we've had a chance to do it collectively.
Well, again, we meet on the 19th.
Yep.
And hopefully we'll be able to tie this up then, if you guys.
I'm
if you-
speaking
if you
without
guys-
consultation, so I invite my colleagues to jump in on that.
If you
I don't know
guys
what your
can
thoughts are.
do it by then, that'd
We
be
haven't had a
great.
chance to review, so I'd rather wait till Monday.
I mean, we've only got 4 weeks,
Right.
4 or 5 weeks before you go to press, so we need to wrap it up. And Mike, the same on your side, if you guys have really, looked at,
I'll defer to my capital.
I was gonna say, I wanna, wait a second, I wanna sit over here for a minute. I wanna put my PNBC hat on.
why don't you come up and stand at the table? There you go, be really official.
Well, I guess from my perspective on PNBC, we haven't had a full board discussion about it either here, is we have, the school identified 3 projects for about $73,000, which we were able to actually fund out of FY19 funds. Subsequent to the creation of the capital list, though, the revised estimate for the Shaker Lane lift repairs is $75,000, if I remember right. So I think procedurally, we need to probably get that on the list and take those 3 projects off the list, just to make sure we're talking about the right projects.
Right, absolutely, that's great.
There. The other one, I believe there was a discussion, and this is secondhand to me, that on the 650 for the high school curbs and paving,
Yep.
that we could split that out as a project of $250,000 for the curb and sidewalk, and then the remaining part would be the paving, because I think we could separate that project so that we might get that to a more bite-sized number that we could deal with
And the safety issues are in the curb and
in the curb and the sidewalk.
It's a life safety and ADA combined.
I just want to put those out there for clarification in terms of how you start prioritizing the budget, because 250 versus 600 is a different level of
And
discussion.
that's not even in the budget at this point. That 650 was not
It's not
identified.
funded.
It's not funded unless something gets shifted.
But I think it might end up needing to be in a higher priority, given some of the issues that have been identified
Okay,
to us.
but again, I mean, your 2.5 boards.
Yeah.
Need-
Well, no,
need to-
that's why I say I got my PNBC hat on right
No,
now, in terms
absolutely.
of just making sure we get the right numbers and right projects and numbers in front of the,
Well, just
for
to
the
be
joint
clear,
discussion.
Darrell, the sidewalk and the curb is not a PMBC project, it's a highway department
Right.
project.
on it there. And
And
then,
excuse me, did Highway agree that the 250 gets you what you think you need?
that's why I
or-
said I heard.
He's back
The last
here.
meeting, he basically said he could do it whatever Chuck said.
He's right
But
here.
Chris, is that what you said?
Well, he said he'd spend whatever you gave him, but seriously, does 250,
250 will get you a good start. I mean, it'll get,
will it take care of the safety issues or not? If it will take care of the safety issues, wonderful. If it won't, then it's the wrong number.
If you piecemeal any project like this, and Chris, you can correct me if I'm wrong, if you piecemeal a project like this, when the berms are set, when the asphalt is being laid, you're much, it's basically a better seal, so you're not gonna get moisture under there, you're not gonna get heaving.
I
It's-
understand
it's-
that, but,
So ideally, the whole project should be done at one time. We have to make some decisions as to whether or not we can swallow that pill.
And that was my only intent of recommending it would just be priced as two items so that you could know what that trade-off number was.
okay. Well,
So anyway, that 250 came from me via Chris in a conversation we had on Friday.
okay, okay,
I mean, I think for 250, we can address a good portion of the problems,
okay.
if not all of them.
Well, that
But,
answers
I
the
mean,
question.
again, that's today, construction is constantly going, I mean, 80 grand at the middle school didn't buy you a whole lot. 250, you have a lot more concrete at the high school, so 250 is, it's a comparable number. I mean, we'll try as best we can.
Okay.
Can't make any promises.
Okay. Well, if the two boards think that that's something you want to do, you're going to have to cut somewhere else. So, I mean, that, you know, we're in this,
Well, again, this prioritization, this is Bonnie's prioritization, we haven't had a whack at our prioritization.
right, no, that's why I'm saying, and that's why
I
I'm
mean, we know what the
asking
bottom
you.
line we have to
Right.
meet. That-
Yeah, I mean, we could sit here and do it, but that makes no sense. So,
Anthony's still here.
Yep, right here.
We have a little room in the schedule, can we make a little room in the schedule?
Yeah.
there's a lot of room in the schedule, but,
24/7, so.
okay, but again, if you can get us feedback by the 19th, we'd be
Well, I
happy
think,
to.
if I may, Mr. Chairman, we had said at the last meeting that we were hoping to get some input from department heads so that we could make better decisions.
No, absolutely, yes.
That's what I thought too, is
Yeah, so
people
I
who've
think
got projects
most
on the
everybody's
list
here, right.
would be here.
So I think maybe getting the input from, just going down the list, and if they're
Well, we
prepared.
we can get that
to do
next
so.
week too, in a more formal setting, where they're all there.
That was what we were hoping to do tonight. And maybe the
We've
department
got-
heads can correct me if I'm,
I mean, Chris is here.
That's why I'm here.
yeah,
Chiefs
that's-
are here.
I think they were expecting to do
That's
that
fine.
tonight.
We can do that if you guys.
Start,
You guys,
start and go through it, if there's a couple things you want to
okay,
further review with Chase and Cindy, then we can take those, but at least we could go through, because there may be some easy things here, right?
Yeah, and I'm not, we're not gonna make decisions right now, but I mean, if
Yeah,
Chris
we
were to
can-
come
we
up
can
here
hear
and say,
present- yeah.
you know, I really need this,
Okay.
this lawnmower, I need this dump truck.
And, yeah, how these things
Instead
play
of-
different roles.
Right.
Can we get rid of this, what happens, yeah, whatever. But all right, so why don't we hear from each of those two that are under our direct report, the fire, Scott's here still too. right?
yeah.
Scott and,
I think PMBC's next on the list after planning board. Can I make some statements?
Yep, go ahead.
So if we reallocate the $73,000 for the 3 school projects to do the lift, the next one is $190,000 for the highway roof replacement, and I believe that's critical,
Correct. It's phase 2.
phase 2. The next one is the Houghton Building roof, which is critical because it's leaking and causing damage inside.
Certainly is.
The police station water infiltration at the perimeter is critical because it's falling apart. You know, go out there and look at the facade, and needs to be deconstructed and reconstructed.
Do we have a legal case on these two projects? I mean, that roof it was supposed to be a
Steve, is the-
forever roof, right?
for the historical society building, I don't think that contract is around anymore, are they?
They are, Rich was talking to them, but it was that snow load when we had 111 inches of snow that actually not only depressed the joists and the rafters, it just cracked all the seams and the solder joints. So it was kind of an unusual occurrence.
So they hide behind an act of God or some silly thing
Yeah.
in the insurance.
Yeah.
Plus, he also checked that, I mean, the number of years that we get for a warranty is only like a year or two for.
Yeah,
for
we were
basic
past the warranty period.
things there, and I think we're like 5 or 6 years into it.
Yeah.
Okay.
There, so well beyond the.
But in the police station, I mean, the walls are falling apart. I mean, that's not like a,
Well, we had them repointed, what was it, 2 years ago? And at no cost to the town. And I don't
And
know.
that didn't work.
It did not work, apparently, yeah.
So I would think that that might be something that
Worth pursuing?
might be, at least take a quick look at it.
Worth a sniff.
Okay?
Now, to follow up on that, Steve, who from PMBC was in charge of that project? That would be,
That was Joe, but Rich had some input on the repair work.
yeah, I just think somebody should be having a dialogue with legal counsel then, and it ought to be somebody who knows it.
Yeah, it was before my time, so we could, when Rich comes back from Florida, we can put him on that.
Can anybody have any other questions on PMBC stuff? The $73,000 worth of projects, are you suggesting that they come off this list?
We're
or
gonna-
we're
The
doing them?
the pavers and landscaping were actually completed last year under fiscal 19.
Okay,
The window shades at Shaker Lane and the ductwork and insulation would be deferred.
okay, so that's, for this list's sake, there's 73,000,
Yes.
okay.
Which ones were those again? The three in a row there? the
There's 13, 30, and
30,
30, Paul?
But we need to add the lift in. And I talked to Steve Mark and asked him there to check. There's emergency repair funds available for schools. Check to see if this, since it's required as part of the facility, I'm gonna have him check to see if this would, kind of
Might.
project would qualify.
Yeah, that'd be great.
I don't know what kind of timeline we could get an answer that this type of project would
I'll
be.
look first thing tomorrow.
Okay, so there's a possible use for the
Just
70?
to investigate alternative funding sources. We can't
Okay.
make any commitment that this kind of project
Now,
would
I want to
qualify.
caveat this. This is based on replacement of a lift and not installation of an elevator. Because an elevator requires a pit, a larger shaft. It's much more expensive.
Okay, so, but that project's a $75,000 project, about?
Ballpark, yeah.
Okay.
Including demolition and the new lift.
And Steve, do you have a sense as to when you might know the likelihood of getting a grant, or if we can even apply for a grant for that?
I'll look at the possibilities tomorrow, and I'm not sure who that's through, if it's through MSBA, if it's through MSBA, they have a lengthy timeline, or if it's through Department of Education maybe, I'm not sure.
Okay.
So
Okay, so maybe again, by the 19th, we can have some feedback for our next meeting. That'd be great. And, okay. Okay, Steve, anything else?
Oh, that's it.
Steve, did you want to touch on I think we had a discussion about the two police projects. One was funded, one was not, was here.
I talked to the chief earlier, and he said what is on the list is needed. The epoxy floor, he can defer, but the police station seal coat and restripe is a maintenance item that needs to be done. Is that correct, chief?
That's correct. Okay. And I could, just in regards to the water infiltration at the perimeter.
Yeah.
If we don't do something soon, we're gonna lose all those windows. They're already all starting to bow. So, you know.
But it's kind of weather dependent. And Ed Mullen was going to be here tonight, but I don't see him, so.
Is that 38,000 urgent enough that we should consider reserve fund transfer for that, or
Well,
to get it going?
that 38,000 was just for reconstruction. We do have about $70,000 in engineering costs. Part of that will go toward this, because we have to deconstruct, understand what the engineering
Issue was.
issue is, and then reconstruct.
Okay, so you have the 70,
Yep,
yes, and this is the 38 to put the bricks back up.
yep.
Okay, so
Yeah, the
in
money
any
get going
event,
anyway,
it
right.
wouldn't,
Right.
we wouldn't be spending it next month or
No.
the month after.
Yeah.
Okay, okay, so that's Won't do it. Okay. All righty. The next on the list is police.
Well, that was police.
Well, that was PMBC Police.
Oh, I see.
It's like park police, only worse.
There you go. Chief, do you have your capital list or no?
I have it in front of me.
Season tires.
You know, if you look at the list in front of us, the first one is the all-season tires. That's
Why
a,
don't you come up instead of being shy in the back room? I know you're a wallflower.
no, I'm not shy at all. Sorry. The all-season tires for the cruisers, we've streamlined all the cruisers. We have the same exact cruiser, which means the same exact tire now, and maintenance problems, maintenance issues. We've worked with a couple of different garages in town. Tire Warehouse has given us a great deal. They change all our tires for us. We buy them off the state bid list. We stockpile them in the Connex behind the police station. So when we need tires, we go back and get them, bring them across to the Tire Warehouse. They put them on for us. So that's a repeating number every year. The radio maintenance and repair contract, that number is not correct. And I've gone back and forth with Bonnie in regards to it. That $19,521 is only for the contract for Cybercom. That's for the interior consoles, all the radios. That's for the towers, for the switches. If something were to happen. Last year, we ran into a MUX issue, turning digital into audio. That was not covered. It was $2,000. We had to find that money somewhere else to finance that. Because an audit had not been done in over 10 years on our radio infrastructure. Cybercom has since done an audit for us, for police, fire, DPW, LELD emergency. And now we're at $19,521. So we have no wiggle room yet as to repairing portables or cruiser radios and like that. So that number should be $25,000. I've gone back and forth the last couple weeks with Bonnie about that.
So for the extra 6,000, you can do what? You can repair 3 radios, 5 radios, 2 radios?
Yeah.
It's the contract.
It's, the $19,500 is just the contract.
Oh, it is?
The
The
$5,000
19 is,
for
but the 6,000 is for,
any portable that gets broken, any car radio that gets broken, any microphone issues, minor repairs we might need the money for.
What's the contract then? I don't understand.
The contract is for the radio console, which is within the
Okay,
department
it's for the
itself.
console. Okay, got
You know, we
it.
have 2 dispatch
I
911
see.
centers, plus we have a side center, along with all the towers, Oak Hill, Newtown, all those.
All right, I
okay,
get
so
it.
you're requesting the 19 to go to 25, is that? Okay. Yes.
So this covers all the radios.
Yeah.
Police, fire, DPW.
Yep.
Light and water.
Emergency light and water and the transfer to the station for highway.
And that additional $5,000 is basically a warranty, like
It-
you get an extended warranty in your car. It's
No,
the same idea.
the additional 5,000 is for anything that may come up, you know, broken antennas, other
That's not covered with
portables.
the contract.
One of the, exactly, things that aren't, you know, we're getting a tussle when we smash our portable, that's $2,000, so.
Break a couple portables, we just made a.
Kojak, choose a radio or,
Let's not,
But this line item will not come up on any of the other departments. This is borne solely by the police department.
okay.
The admin vehicle, that's to replace the deputy chief's car. His car is over 100,000 miles. We've already had some major wiring issues going with it. It's a maintenance issue. It's in the replacement cost right now as to where we should be for the fleet program that Chief King had put in place a while ago. Basically, it's
So how old is the car?
7 years,
So what?
7 years old.
7, okay. Okay.
No.
And then the next line item is the police cruiser itself, and that goes along with the first responder vehicles that we have. So this year is an admin car and a patrol car. Next year would be 2 patrol cars. Mileage gets up there, things start breaking, we replace them out. Just following in protocol as to what has happened for the last 10 years and how they put this in place. The new carpet in the EOC, Sergeant Detective's office, the building's 11 years old. Things are starting to get worn and torn. We need to put some maintenance into our buildings. You know, the community room is getting used at least 4 to 5 times a week, whether it's school committee or Girl Scouts or classes we're running in there, it's getting utilized all the time. As far as the sergeant's office and detective's office, we can hold off on that and get them steam clean another year. But the community room's the face of our community also, and there's a lot of groups using that, so. And that's where I stand.
And any other questions for Chief?
I appreciate the chief offering up, holding off on the detectives and the sergeants' offices and not covering those. Just don't know how much savings we're gonna realize there. So if we're gonna replace, I also appreciate the fact that it is the face of the community. We want to make sure that, like this room, we have carpets replaced because we use this room a lot and it's kind of for the school committee, people come in, they have kind of torn carpets in there, and it's a reflection back on the town, back on the police department. So I think that maybe just look at those numbers, and I would advocate for at least replacing that office room carpet. And if in fact there is some savings, I'm not doing the other two offices.
It's all relative. At my house, the 11-year-old carpet is the new carpet.
And betting the house.
Anything else for the Chief? Okay, great. Well,
Thank you.
again, you know, if you guys can circle back and make your recommendations for the 19th, would be great.
Thank you.
Fire? Come on.
No, thank you.
I don't know. I was wondering too.
How we doing? On the fire side, on the first one that we have is the 15,000. These are all listed in order of priority. But the 15,000 is our annual gear replacement. That gets us about 5 or 6 sets of gear, boots, gloves, helmets, things like that. So it just kind of keeps us in a rotation for that.
And to remind everybody sort of how 25,000 buys you how many sets of gear, so how many years do you sort of roll the gear?
Sorry, yeah, what did I do? I'm talking, yeah, 15,000, not 25.
Oh, I'm sorry, I
So-
read the wrong one.
That'll get, I was gonna say, you keep getting a bonus in there.
He's spending money like crazy, this guy.
Yeah, Judge.
That'll get us about 5 or 6 sets of gear,
Okay.
depending on if helmets or boots need to be replaced, things like that. But a set of gear is roughly $2,500 to $2,800.
Okay, and how many sets do you have? So it rolls every 4 years
There's
or 5?
47,
Okay.
so
Okay.
that's
7 or 8
career
years.
and-
7 or 8 years.
Yep.
Okay.
The $25,000 major, that's for all major equipment repair. Basically, it takes care of the entire fleet. Anything that goes wrong, you know, from tires to major repairs. And as we've seen in the past, some of those repairs between the engines or the ladder can be $10,000 to $15,000 on a single repair. So those funds can go rather quickly. $15,000 for the hose
Where are
replacement.
you this year so far? Do you have a sense?
We've spent about $13,000 so far. For the $15,000, this is a 3-year hose replacement. This will replace all the hose on all of the apparatus. Right now, all of our main supply lines and everything are roughly in the 92 and 93 and 94 year range. So that typically should last about 10 to 15. So it's in the last year we lost 17 lengths of hose just during hose testing. So it's a little overdue, but needs to be replaced just for reliability. $5,000 for a utility trailer. Last year with the grant that we got through the State House and part of the one that we shared with the police department, we purchased a ATV, basically with a pump and stuff that can go. It has tracks and wheels, but it needs a trailer to haul it around town, haul it out for mutual aid. So that's roughly $5,000. And then the 350 is for a new ambulance. The existing ambulance has, or the older of the two, has about 92,000 miles, 92 and change. This would get us into a rotation. We're looking at keeping the other ambulances, so we'd have three. Would actually have one as a backup. When they go down, they typically go down for a week or up to 2 weeks, and then we rely on our mutual aid partners more. At least this would allow us to always have a reserve, and/or if we have multiple back-to-back medicals, would potentially have a third ambulance that we could roll out the door.
Didn't you have this on last year's request too?
We did, yes, and that was bumped off, obviously, to, the latter was the priority, so this was bumped up.
All of your items were recommended by Bonnie to be funded. In our review, or the selectmen's review, if it turns out that one or two have to go, is this the priority?
That's correct.
The way you've got it laid out is priority?
Yes.
Okay.
So the utility trailer above the ambulance.
Yes.
I agree with that.
I want to play poker with this guy.
Okay, good.
All right.
Any other questions, or?
No, I agree, I'd rather buy the utility trailer.
I mean, you know, it's similar to in the past, it does get bumped, but we're.
So the question with
You're an
that,
honest
though,
man, you do what you're supposed to do.
but the other question of that, though, the other ambulances, when are they due? Because you don't want to be too, get to the point where you have two of those in 1 year, right? So you.
And that's
you
what
need to
we're
be
trying-
reliable, but you also need to spread
Right.
it out.
We're trying to spread them out, and by keeping them, the goal would be to basically, I mean, we had some issues where we had to replace one right after the other in the past.
Right.
And if we can extend the life on those, even with, something in the middle, and we can actually, every 6 years, replace an ambulance, so that an ambulance would last roughly 18 years, that'd be pretty good. The other issue that we have is the run volume increases, so they get used more and more, and they run all day.
So this is a 2012. The other ambulance you have is
Is a 13.
13. Okay, so we've got two sort of back-to-back. So
Break that
we're sort of
cycle
in that,
somehow.
we're sort of in that
That's what we want to try to extend them out.
starting this 6-year cycle. So it sort of makes sense to me, but again, short-term, do we do it this year, do it next year? I don't know. That's why you guys get the big bucks. Okay.
Get the magic wand, yes, speaking of that, is that on there?
Okay, good. Thank you. Okay. Come on up.
Hello.
Hello.
Chris?
Out on the roads today.
Oh, thank you. Look at that's item number 2 on my list, right? Let's deal with those. All right, so, let's see, what did I ask for? Oh,
Too much.
Too much, it's always too much. The first one is the 20 grand, that's the capital to do unexpected major repairs. That's kind of the one we ask for.
And again, my standard question so far this year about what do you?
We spent about 10 so far.
Okay, so 20 grand still feels about right.
Yeah, we spend it all, or almost all of it. Some years we spend 22, but that's because we have a little extra left over from the year before, so.
Okay.
It averages pretty close to that 20.
Okay.
The next one is the new Mac. This is, number 2, I guess, would be in the line of 6 of them that need to be replaced. The first one, I don't know if any of you saw it today, actually out with the wing. We just got it last week, so today was the first major storm with the new truck, so. We christened it, yeah, and it worked unbelievably well, so. So
now he needs a new truck.
I need another one. Well, I won't be able to use it until next year, so I'll be in the
I
same spot.
hope.
Yeah, so like I said, it's replacing a 92. The last one replaced a 92, so we're trying to spread them out. When they were originally purchased, they were 2 at a time, but they were not $250,000 a piece back then, so I'm trying to push them 1 year at a time.
Okay, so is, similar to what Chief was saying, if he could get himself to a 6-year cycle for ambulances, then he'd be like 12 to 18 years on the use. The life expectancy of this truck is,
If I continue the maintenance program that we have, I can make probably another 20, 30 years. I mean, they're a
So-
20-year truck for us, because we are very diligent on our maintenance.
and what's the next one in line? You've got this is a 92,
93s.
93?
So then we have two 93s, then we have two 94s, and then two 95s.
Okay, so we're sort of in the soup here. We've got a,
So realizing that next year it'll be, instead of 251, it'll probably be 260 and then 270. We're in a position now where we don't use sand and salt anymore, so our trucks don't need to be refilled 2 or 3 times. So the years ago, you used to want to get the biggest truck with the biggest hopper, so you didn't have to go back multiple times. Now we're only using about half of a load when we salt the entire route. So my thought next year is to actually downgrade the size of the trucks, which will hopefully get us from 250 to, say, 150, which then makes it a much more palatable truck, because we don't need 6 giant Mack dump trucks. We can get away with 2 big ones, because we still do need 2 big ones. And then we can go with 4, I'll call them mid-sized trucks. Not a pickup truck, but not a big, huge truck. One that can still put an 11-foot plow on it, but not something that's $250,000.
but the 92 that you're replacing is obviously the next one to be replaced in your mind. I mean,
Yeah,
just from
we
a
just-
condition standpoint, is it the truck that
Yeah.
absolutely needs to be replaced?
Yeah,
or-
we actually just burned out the alternator on it today, so that's gotta get replaced, so. It's starting to go, I mean, everything's going, the front ends are starting to go, and the frame's getting weak,
Okay,
so. It's only a matter of time before we actually have to physically deadline it.
all right.
Is everything going to all salt now?
Yes, everything is all salt. Yeah, we don't use any, the only sand we have is for the residents. We don't use the sand, for the residents to come in. The next one is to replace a 2004 one-ton dump with a new F550 dump. The 04s, we've repaired the frame a couple times. It's seen the end of its useful life. It's costing us more money to keep it running than it's making us, so to speak, so it's kind of a no-brainer for me, but, and the reason we're upsizing to 550s is we're putting sanders in all the trucks now, which is, as you can see, is helping the roads. We're just being able to get them treated quicker and a little more efficiently.
Okay.
So the next truck is replacing the General Foreman's truck, which is a 2011 with an F350. It's getting up there in age. To the pickup trucks, we tend to try to replace every 8 years. It's just kind of where we found the line starts to cost us more money after that. And then the next one was obviously for the addition on the building. That was kind of in direct response to the Wickham Ave, us losing that building and the space and stuff. But at this point, we kind of do have a solution, but we're just renting space for nothing. And then the 650 for the sidewalks, you talked about that. So I guess mine is kind of a little different, where I'd rather try to break it out as 2 different, the highway and the parks. They're 2 totally different entities. My attitude is a lawnmower is not important to the highway, but it's incredibly important to parks and vice versa. So if you look at them as 2 different ones, so my number 1 for highway would be, I guess, the 20,000 and the dump truck. But then my number 1 for the park side would be this, you have this $20,000, which is just to do major repairs on the sports fields. Kind of pick a field one year and we go through it.
Yep.
Similar to what we did for, at the high school a couple years ago. And then my next one is actually, it's flipped. So the most important lawnmower that I really need is to replace my wide area mower. And it's a 97 that we want to replace. It's just, obviously the bigger the lawnmower, the more we can mow, the more efficient we are. None of the organizations like playing on long grass, that's kind of a thing. And it ends up kind of catching up with us. If we end up getting behind, we have to bag it, and then now it's like a catch-22, we're losing from the very beginning.
So that's an item that you'd make a pitch to the selectmen to support?
Absolutely.
Where Bonnie didn't.
Yeah, absolutely. And in all honesty, I would be willing to, I can push the foreman's truck a year or two more to get this lawnmower. That's how much more important the lawnmower is, in my opinion.
Okay.
I'd be willing to, I know it's not an exact dollar for dollar,
No,
but
but that's fair.
something
Okay.
like that.
But Kristen, how come they weren't ordered that way?
The highway stuff and then the park stuff, you mean?
Yeah, because we only really see it as one.
Yeah, I tried to explain that to Bonnie. It got portrayed on this not quite accurate like that.
Right.
I tried to make the example that highway and parks, while it's under under one umbrella, it really needs to kind of be two separate capitals.
Let me just.
Yeah, so one or the other should change. They either ought to be integrated together or they ought to be titled differently.
Yeah, correct. I fully agree with that, and that's kind of what I tried to explain.
Yep, right, I mean, I picked
Yeah.
up on it, but I just
You,
didn't.
just to be clear, you've got two mowers here.
Yeah, so then the other one is
Which mower are you talking about? Is
the second one, the
Second one is a
$65,000.
priority.
Yeah,
The wide area.
the wide area mower, correct. The other one is an '01. It is getting older, but I can do more with the wide one. So I can, realistically, I could almost use that one as a spare now if I had the brand new wide mower, because we really can't use the '97 wide mower now. It just breaks too often, and frankly, it's hard for us to get parts anymore. So it ends up sitting more, and we have to use the old ones. Basically, we kind of want to flip them.
Right.
Okay.
And so going back to your other things, there was one you said that the Chevy here is the one that you said you could put that one off?
Yeah, I mean.
The other three are still up there. but
The other three, I guess it'd technically be two plus the capital money.
Right, okay. Yeah.
Those three are critically important.
Okay.
The old Ford is gonna get redlined at some point in the very near future. We've had to weld the frame a couple times. But the 2011 Chevy, we really could push another year, if I could get my lawnmower. I don't want to just say that, and next thing you know, I don't get either, but.
No, but you need to say what's really important here.
Yeah, I mean,
So we
the wide
absolutely have to
mower
hear
is
it.
by far the most important. I mean, I can end up mowing all the sports fields twice a week with the wide mower. It takes me almost a week and a half to do it with the small ones. So it's that much more efficient.
Well, we've got you the two cemetery items.
Oh, yeah. The 95, it's getting pretty old. It's kind of in the same ballpark. He's having a real hard time finding parts for it. So we'd like to replace it with just a new one. This is a zero-turn bagger. And then the 20-foot container, he's running into a bit of an issue with storage down there, and it's becoming a problem. It's kind of having to leave some of his lawnmowers outside all winter, and vice versa, and the snow blowers and stuff in the summer. So a short-term, or I guess actually it could be pretty permanent, but a relatively cheap, inexpensive fix for us would be just to get a 20-foot storage container. They're watertight, be able to put the summer stuff in the winter and winter stuff in the summer. We have a nice space down in the back, so it won't be obtrusive, so if you drove in, you wouldn't be looking at this god-awful looking storage container.
And it's a purchase, this isn't a rental or a lease.
No,
it's
this would be a purchase. That's delivered and everything cost, yeah.
Maybe we'll buy two and put the police department in one that doesn't leak.
There you go. We can get a bigger one, maybe we get a 40-foot.
40 foot for the police department.
There you go.
Now, would you put that on a pad, and does this include the pad?
No, we'd set it right on the ground.
Right on the
Yeah,
ground?
we don't need, it's got enough, all the weight's distributed evenly, so there won't be any settlement or anything, and we'll just pave a little ramp to
There's
it.
a pretty good amount of paved space back there anyways, isn't there?
Yeah. If you come down around, the garage is kind of here, we kind of tuck it off onto the corner over there,
Like we're
so.
talking to-
There's a row of arborvitae
It's a
up
school.
there. It's not really, you won't see it, it won't be ugly looking.
That's going to be worth money,
Yeah.
worth spending, right? Saves the equipment, that's probably smart stuff,
Okay.
that saves the equipment, right?
Yeah. That's kind of what we thought. So.
Any other questions for Mark?
I
Yep.
have two questions. I have one question for highway in general. So you said are all your dump trucks the same size now? Because you said you were buying another large one and then going to small ones. Is there a reason to replace the large one with another large one now rather than spread the large ones out so they're not back to back?
Cost would be my number one. I mean, this truck, right off the bat, went up $5,000 this year, and we actually got lucky, well, I shouldn't say got lucky. The estimate was done prior to steel escalation prices, so the 251 might not be enough, but he kind of gave me his word he would honor that price to an extent. My thought would be is if you push that 2 years, 3 years, now you start creeping up into that 270, 275 range, and that's an extreme number. For a truck that'll last 30 years, spending 250 right now instead of spending 275 in 2 years, to me seems like it makes sense, but it's the purview of all the boards.
Good question, Mark. Yeah. You said you had two
My other
questions.
question was, sitting here listening, each department has a budget for the maintenance of their vehicles. Why isn't there just one maintenance of vehicles number that the departments share, rather than police having 20 and fire having 20, right? Because then you'd be able to track that how much you're spending on maintenance across the fleet, rather than asking each department. Right, it seems like it would be more efficient to generate one contract and one, is that just a historical thing, or?
I can answer partly.
Yeah.
90, no, I shouldn't even say that. 100% of my budget is materials only, where I have an on-site. So if we combine it all, then, I mean, they have to pay for labor to do maintenance on their equipment, where I only have to pay for parts. So, I mean, you guess you could theoretically do it, but I guess I could kind of call it a better bang for your buck, because I'm only buying parts. I don't know if that
But
answers the question.
to Mark's point, should we look at you doing the maintenance for all of the vehicles?
Was he saying that, or was he saying consolidate, so the police and fire?
Well, it can be both, right? I mean, it seems odd that each department has to come and ask you for a maintenance budget for their vehicles, when you can just say, here's a maintenance budget for the stuff we own, right? You're not going to each building and saying how much it costs to do a maintenance on the building, right? There's a fund that says, we're paying for building maintenance, right? And if this building needs something in this building, right, we're not going piecemeal on these things, but we are for vehicles by department.
Personally, from an analysis point of view, I always prefer to roll things up than have to break them down again. I would want to know how much we're paying specifically for police cruiser maintenance versus fire truck maintenance. The other thing, it seems to me, is they're two distinctly different vehicles, even though they have wheels and engines. But, I mean, I get your point that you would want to be able to make sure you can roll it up easily, but I definitely want to make sure I see it line item by line item. And unless you're going to find some economy of scale,
Right, that was my
that's
question.
the reason to do it. If you're not going to find economy of scale, and I don't think you are, because I'm pretty sure the cruisers go to a typical auto mechanic, and I know the fire trucks and ambulances don't, right?
And if we were to do it in-house, you're looking at, my bays aren't big enough, which means you'd have to build an addition. And you
Hire a mechanic.
add at least one, probably two, because you need one ASCE certified one and one
That's come up
fire.
periodically, but nobody's ever been able to make the hump that's worth the.
It's, I mean, you'd be looking
And
at.
you know, as soon as you
125.
combine all the budgets, the first question somebody's gonna ask in the next cycle is, what are each of the departments spending?
Well, that and, you
Human
know,
nature.
I could have a frame break on a big truck, and it cost me $15,000 like that. I may have two, the next thing you know, I spent 30, and now another department's bitching at me, why did you spend more of the money than I?
But it's gonna be the same thing if you exhausted your budget anyway, right? So it's the same issue, it's just how you're tracking it.
You would like to think so, but human nature doesn't make that typically the case.
Okay,
You know?
good. Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Schools?
Actually, can I just ask a question? You had kind of glossed over the $800,000 addition,
Yes.
and I think as part of the Space Needs Working Group, we've thrown a lot of different stuff against the wall, and I think that needs to be incorporated into what we're looking at, because the possibility.
Absolutely.
It's been raised that, you know, perhaps all permitting authorities could be housed with highway. If we did do an expansion, we could take a look at, you know, what are your space needs for office? And if we were to house the building inspector, the plumbing, electrical, and any of the permitting authorities over there, other communities have done it successfully.
I think it's a great idea.
You know, if you're going into, look at what you need to do a subdivision or something like that, they can have the conversation with you, they can go down and talk to.
I mean, right now, they come down to me and pull the driveway permit, and then they will drive up here.
Exactly.
Pull-
exactly.
to get the
So
trench permit.
There's some kind of pumping the brakes on that a little bit right now.
Oh, I
think
agree.
is appropriate.
It was at the bottom,
Financial
it was at the
reasons.
bottom of my list for a reason, but yeah.
But I also think that it's something that we're not taking a close look at it, but maybe we take a little better look at it and see if maybe there's some
Yeah.
opportunity for us.
Yeah, because if we're gonna do one thing, maybe it makes sense to combine it and do it all at once or
Yeah.
something.
Yeah, I think you guys should probably look at what the back and actually looking at it.
Anything else?
Let's get another capital.
No, you-
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Chris.
I guess last one is schools. Mike, I don't know whether you have anything on capital, or you've got the list.
I will defer to Daryl and
CMBC.
Yeah, I'll just speak generally, and then Steve can bail me out with the
You've
details
got
if you
your-
have questions there. Yeah, I'm now in school committee, not the
Okay,
NBC.
all right. You're bipolar, is that the idea?
Here, I'll come up so we can,
Beware budget guys wearing red, that's all I know.
Target. So I think we could probably look, ours are probably pretty much sorted in priority order there. The first two, technology and school resources, is our annual refreshment of the technology infrastructure and the educational infrastructure items there. The next one is listed as radio signal booster. I think in reality that's a cellular boosters for the schools to enhance the cell phone coverage to make sure that
School
the
resources is
They're
next.
radio boosters.
radio.
The radio boosters for the handheld radios. So
Oh, I
what we're-
thought they were for the cells. Okay.
two different things.
Right, for the handheld radio. So what we're finding is, as staff is out more in various parts of the properties, the handheld radios don't have the range to reach back to the office. So this is a booster that just helps increase that range and security so that they have instant communication. When they're in the backfield at Shaker Lane, for instance, they can reach the front office. Same thing with Russell Street, it's back on the track. The teachers who take students out now take handheld radios out, and they'll be able to reach the office. So that booster just increases that signal strength.
Okay, so that's for all the schools, or?
This would be, we did one school last year, this would be for the other 3 schools.
Okay. Okay, thank you.
And then while you're going, why don't you talk, not so I don't mess it up on the security improvements then.
So, the security improvements is primarily 2 schools, it's Shaker Lane School and Russell Street School. So Russell Street School, when you walk in the front lobby, the front office staff is exposed directly to visitors coming in, and so one of the safety and security recommendations and the police department recommendations was we put some kind of a glass barrier there, so that there is at least a deterrent there. It also helps a little bit, the side benefit of that is that we get a little bit of HVAC savings, because the students come in and out the front door of the school, and every time they open the door, the heat just gets sucked out of the building. So this would also save some of the heat in the office, but it's really a deterrent, and there would be some pass-through windows, like a bank teller window kind of thing, where parents and visitors would at least have a barrier between them and
And
the
you'd
front office
buzz
staff.
them in or whatever.
Right, and Shaker Lane, there's a reception window, and it would be the same thing, just a small glass enclosure with a pass-through.
Okay.
And then the final one on our list was the replacement of the high school phone system. I think that one has been on the list for a couple of years.
Yeah, it's been on
if I
the
remember.
list. I'm sorry, I can speak to that too.
Yep.
So the phone at the high school system is original to the high school. It's 2001 when it was installed, so it's getting up, it's constantly going down, it's constantly having problems. We're constantly having communication problems between the classrooms and the front office with circuits going down within the boards. We've replaced as much as we can the circuits within the system. It's time to replace the system.
Okay.
So-
And this is a reasonably good quote at this point, or?
It is, this is a very good quote, and this is the same type of system that we put in Shaker Lane last year, so we're trying to coordinate those systems
Okay.
for management as well.
Great,
Yeah.
okay,
Yeah, and I would say that they're listed in approximate priority order.
okay.
I see there's an AED here for the
Yeah, the next,
middle school field, and wouldn't that be a life safety item that you'd want to have on your list?
Well, it was on our list, but I think we're looking at alternate ways of maybe being able to accommodate that, you know, I mean,
Okay.
we want all of them, but I think in reality, some of them, particularly when we start looking at the furniture replacement, the carpets, the dividing wall replacements, things like that, the bill's gonna come due for those eventually there. So, I mean, it's just a matter of how many years we keep pushing off
push it off,
before we
right.
address those projects
Okay.
there. I think we have an approach that we might be able to address the AED.
Okay.
We do have AEDs at the middle school, just to be clear. This would be an external one that we put in. So recently, we put an external one at Russell Street School that will service the track. And we put an external one, additional one at the high school that will service the fields. So that if there's an emergency on the field, that precludes somebody from having to gain access into the building. So this would be the same thing at middle school. We would just put an exterior AED with a cabinet with a radio call signal to the police department, so that if there's an event on the field at middle school, that AED would be available.
Are there any grants for this kind of safety equipment? I'm just asking a off-the-wall question.
You're talking about the field that's next to the parking lot?
Yeah, the little.
Because there is one at alumni, external.
Yes, there's an external one at alumni. Yes.
So this would be at the far side of the gym? where-
Yeah, it would be outside the gym,
Correct.
I would assume.
Yes.
But
I just didn't know if
I've
there
been
are
on that same road with
any
There's
grants or
There's a lot
anything,
of corporations that
Yeah.
Yeah,
might be able to.
so I think we were gonna look at investigating alternate funding source for that first, before prioritizing it onto the list.
Okay, great.
Just make some comments relative to the glass enclosure, and you mentioned bank teller. All the banks are taking the glass down. So it's, and it just, to me, it's, I like the open, and, you know, I haven't discussed this with anybody in the school department. I personally like the openness of seeing Mrs. Saylor, and you walk in, it's just much more personable, and I just.
They would see them, it's all
I
glass.
understand that, just, I can see the pros and cons of it, but I don't know that this year's $15,000, I'd rather have some conversation around it personally, that's me. I mean, I'm just one voice, you know, some dude that doesn't have a voice.
Well,
What we're doing, Chuck, is taking a look at safety and security
Yeah,
upgrades,
yeah,
and
you
so
hire
we're
professionals to take a
looking
look.
at national recommendations, et cetera, and you know, the bottom line is if heaven forbid you have somebody come in your school that you don't want them in there, you need to try to keep your office intact for communication, and if you don't have any barriers, you could be in trouble in a hurry. So we've talked about this for a couple of years, but we're getting to the point now where these recommendations are becoming more pronounced, and we're charged with the responsibility, as you all know, of keeping our schools as safe as possible. And it's just one more thing that we feel that we need to do to maximize safety.
Yeah, I definitely agree with the safety component, I just,
Yeah, I mean,
I
I think.
have some questions about this all, and I just don't know that, you know, I think, I trust that you guys have had those conversations.
There's also a recommendation by the security audit we done a couple of years ago.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I don't think we don't just blindly go into those recommendations, because I think we also look at in terms of secondary effects of like the culture of the school and the other pieces there, because I think there are certain recommendations that are appropriate more for more city-oriented schools than our schools, that we've been just like, that changes the dynamic way too much, types of things there, and.
I just don't know what level of security you get from having a glass wall. I really don't. If someone does come into the building, God forbid someone did come into the building, the front office did buzz them in, because they have to be buzzed in, and they either breached that system or they were buzzed in.
I appreciate that,
I don't think
and
glass is
that's certainly one scenario that everybody has on the fronts of their minds, but not all of our encounters with parents and students rise to that level, but are still concerning. And having at least some of that type of barrier could conceivably, in theory, diffuse that enough that what might have happened wouldn't have happened. So it's that balance, you know, just trying to think about it. I mean, I agree with the scenario, but it doesn't, you would say, well, why glass? Why not plexiglass? Or, and then you get into that issue where, you know, now it's not what we want, and, you know, just seeking it out, you know, the balance.
Yeah. Just raising it,
Yep.
if you were gonna put something on the chopping block this year, I'd like that more
That was
conversation.
my reaction too, it's like, oh, I don't want to feel like I'm going into a.
unfortunately, it's a sign of the times. I mean,
I know.
it's really
I
sad,
know.
but.
Thanks, John.
No problem.
Okay, and the only other one that we didn't talk about was Park and Rec. They have a couple of small items. And
Nobody's listening. Guys,
Betsy
please.
mentioned that they're actually talking to CPC about at least one of them. So that might be an option for the dock. It's a $25,000 item.
That one yet, that's good.
Their sailing program has really taken off, but they've got a problem now with being able to dock the boats up and so on, make it easily, and people that are able to swim out to the boats is one thing, but some of them can't as well, and
So if we can find a way to do that, if CPC can help us, that's wonderful. If not, we might circle back and request that funding.
the boat's $1. 25,000.
Well, I think it's 25,000.
Yeah,
It's
25, yeah.
not huge bucks, but it's, I think they're doing a real nice job down there. And I think,
Yeah.
I think it was very beneficial to go through this list tonight, so we didn't have to rehash that Monday night.
And you got everybody here.
Oh, yeah.
Take advantage
You
of
know,
being
and
here.
then we can report out what our,
yeah, no, I mean, seriously, if you guys have
This was very
different feeling,
helpful
that,
for all of us, I agree.
yeah, no, get it back to us, and hopefully we'll be able to vote at the 19th and get it on the way. Okay. I don't have much else. Obviously, Bonnie's in the Caribbean somewhere. On the operating budget,
We did have a little work session with
the-
Mike Fontanella, Mike,
Yep.
Gary from your board, myself,
Yep.
Anthony,
Yeah.
Kelly, who else was there? Is there anybody?
yeah, he sent out a note just summarizing what you guys discussed.
Yeah, I
that's-
mean, I credit Mike Fontanella for taking the lead and suggesting a way to address the, what we thought was the moving target deficit number on the operating side of about, what was it?
206, roughly 206,000 from
Right.
Bonnie's last model.
And just so I'm clear, the 206 is the difference between the 1,050,000 or the 1.2? What's the base that you say that we're 200,000 apart?
The model that she showed, showing all of the level serviced, level staffing, budget requests for all the departments, including the school budget, still had a deficit. It was like 500, close to 600,000 a few weeks ago, and then she at the last update that we had from her, she identified some new revenue, and it had closed that gap down to about 206,000.
Okay, so that assumes that all of the new revenue that came from the assessors basically goes to the
Already
schools.
wrapped in
I mean,
there.
that's
No, I
some-
wouldn't phrase it like that at all.
What?
There was a deficit of close to $600,000 when all the departments showed their level service, level staffing budget. There was a deficit.
Yeah.
Whether it's, you can't say it was the school department's fault that the deficit was there.
I'm not saying it's the
all- It all
school,
adds up to that.
I'm not saying that's the school
And
department's
then
fault.
she identified new revenue, and now the remaining deficit is about 206,000.
I will say,
All- virtually all of
the
which
school
will go to
department is
schools.
distinct in this respect. From Mike's offering, all the cuts that were offered on the table came exclusively from the school department.
Yeah, yeah.
And they weren't looking to cut other
Yeah,
departments, so
that's
I
fine.
think $92,000 were put forward.
Yeah.
And we had a bit of a disadvantage, none of the folks who own these spreadsheets was at the table, so we were kind of doing it anecdotally. But I give credit where credit's due to get us off the schneid. The school department, at least Mike anyways, had said, here's a way you can do it. Now, granted, some of the other adjustments at the bottom of the page, which I think we all collectively knew would be greeted with some anxiety, do run afoul of our adopted policies.
Right.
Hence the, well, here's one solution. Anyone have a better one? A call that's gone out, and I've, heard crickets out there. Haven't
Well,
had anybody come back with anything
Yeah,
better
but-
yet, but it's, I think important work's been done shrinking the moving target deficit and also getting issues on the table But also, it's important to recognize in the context of what we're talking about here, about a $40 million budget, we're down a pretty small change to.
Oh, absolutely.
I mean, it's the sort of thing that historically, one bit of good news solves it, and one bit of bad news doubles it, you know, depending upon what email you open on any given day.
Oh, absolutely,
A
absolutely.
few years ago, we would have gone to town meeting with it this way, and Bonnie would have just fixed it later, right?
Yeah,
Before we said it had to be
One
balanced.
time, we
right?
actually did that, none of us felt comfortable doing that.
Right, right, no, we-
It worked out, but, yeah, best not to.
No, I agree.
Right.
So we should feel good that we're close to the
Right,
end.
and you know, my personal feeling, and I apologize for not being able to be there, I was out of town, but
Yeah,
is with all the money we're going to be borrowing over the next 3 to 5 years, doing anything that potentially jeopardizes our bond rating, I think is fiscally irresponsible. And before I would even entertain doing anything to modify the management to our policy, I would want to hear from bond counsel and the auditors. Because you know, you add another point to our borrowing rate, and it's going to be huge bucks over the next 10, 15 years. So while I think it's, you know, it's an interesting way to look at it, but if either the auditor or bond counsel even looks half askance at it, I would, at least this time around, I'd say, don't do it.
that's all fine. I mean, I'm not advocating individually those particular charges, although I don't mind the fact that they've been put on the table. I'm just saying.
No, that's fine for discussion, but
To my mind, it'd be rather than, you know, engaging all the powers that be to determine how that might affect our bond rate, well, why not put that same amount of energy into finding $100,000 worth of solution in the, you know, either the revenue or the expenditure side of the ledger book?
Okay, well,
That's all we really have to do, unless,
you two guys control all the spending in the town. Find $100,000.
well, yeah, but all the people who
You've
control
got-
the spreadsheets are the ones who keep them close to their chests.
Well,
Disparity.
they work for you,
Yeah,
and they
well,
work for Mike and.
that's theory, I don't know,
Well, I guess I do have one question on the revolving fund spreadsheet. On the SPED and circuit breaker. In 2018, we got 856,000 in receipts, expenditures of 813. And then that brought us a balance of 856 going forward. And we're into 2019. And we received 809 because of the previous year's expenditures.
That's circuit breaker, right?
Yes.
That's circuit breaker. So that says that the 2018 expenditure must have been either lower than 17 or the, what's the base budget thing that I forget the term.
It's 4 times the foundation budget.
The foundation budget, right. So the pieces of the moving target are your spending, the foundation budget, and that creates the circuit breaker.
Well, there's also the rate that the state reimburses. So that rate fluctuates, it's fluctuated over the years anywhere from 60% up to 73%. So, and that rate varies from year to year. So it could be 68. We were told that the reimbursement rate for this year going into next year will be 68%. It's been 70% and 72%. Again, so there's more than just 2 moving pieces in there.
Okay, so what was the percent for 2019? 68%, or that's for 2020?
the rate that they're estimating for 2019 expenditures
All right,
that we get reimbursed in 2020 is 60, telling us it's gonna be 68%.
okay. Okay, so
And that's
the,
down, the rate we got reimbursed for last year
Was
was
1 or 2 or 3.
71 or 72%, I don't remember
Okay,
exactly.
so it's down 3 or 4%?
Yes.
Okay. And I think during your presentation, Mike, I think you said that sped spending this year was up 300,000 or so, and you covered it out of choice, or wherever you covered it out of.
Efficiencies, yeah.
So the 856 here, does that include the 300,000, or is it 300 on top of that you'll report to the state?
The 856, I don't remember the spreadsheet exactly, but the 856 is money that we're getting in FY19.
No, it's expenditures. It's not-
Expenditures?
Expenditures.
So the money we received in FY18 was 856, or close to that number.
Right, and it went down to
We're
809.
required by law to spend all of circuit breaker within one calendar year
Right.
of when we get it. So the 856 is money that we received last year, we spend this year. The 809,000 that we were gonna receive in FY19, we have that available to spend in FY20.
Right, but I guess the question I have is, what will we be spending, what will we actually be spending on sped? Because.
That's not what the circuit breaker is
No, no,
designed
no,
to show.
No,
It just shows what we're gonna spend out of circuit breaker.
Right.
There's way more we're gonna spend on sped, specifically out of district, which is what the circuit breaker is specifically geared towards. This is just what we're getting reimbursed on what we spend above 4 times the foundation budget times whatever the reimbursement
whatever the
is.
rate is.
Yeah, that's not the number we're spending on out of district tuition.
Okay, so
At all.
the circuit breaker is not figured on all out of,
It
District.
is, and but it's from last year, what we spent last year above the foundation budget,
right.
Times the
So
reimbursement.
I guess my question is, if we're spending 300,000 more this year, how much of that is in the circuit breaker?
None of it for
Because
this year, because that'll go into next year's
Right,
number.
but what you're saying is next year is only going up
No,
$500.
next year. The next budget model, FY '21, is where you'll see that reflected. The amount we're spending
So
now, we
it's-
won't get
so it's-
reimbursed,
so
but
it's
we
two-
won't model until next year.
So it's 2 years in arrear, it's not 1 year in arrear? I thought it was 1 year in
We get
arrear.
reimbursed 1 year's in arrear, but the way our model is the money that we receive in 1 year, so the money we receive in FY19 was for FY18 expenditures.
Right.
We carry that forward for FY20.
Right,
So FY19 expenditures will get reimbursed in FY20, and we'll save that for FY21 budgeting purposes.
Okay,
and it's-
but you have the ability to spend it in the same year that you get it.
We do spend it in the same year we get it already.
No, what you're saying is, you get it this year and you put it against next year, is what I thought I heard from Steve.
No, we're not explaining it correctly, I'm sorry.
Right.
Whatever we get from the state, we spend. In that year, we get it, we spend it. There is no reserve left in circuit breaker. It's gone. We flush it.
No, this says it's an ending balance.
The
I mean,
the
these are
circuit
the,
breaker funds that we receive in FY19
All we spent 20.
will go to
will go to
FY20.
FY20 budget.
Right,
Yes, so it's been that way, yes.
okay.
gets
So
spent.
if that's my long-winded question is, if we're spending 300,000 more this year, will we get some percentage more of that back next year? Because we're showing it flat for basically 809 to 810 next year. So
So-
you're showing it only going up $1,000 when you're saying you're spending 300,000 more this year.
So
And it just,
theoretically, yes, but you don't know until the actual claims are filed and they're reviewed by the state and they're audited by the state, and those reimbursement rates are then established. We don't know what that reimbursement is going to
And
be.
when in the cycle do you know that? Ballpark, do you know it during the summer, do you know it halfway through the
We
year?
submit in the
Spring?
spring, I don't remember, they submit in the spring of,
October, November. yeah.
right.
October or November, we know.
And then,
No, I'm just wondering
he
if,
said October,
It's in
November.
October to November.
October, November?
Yes.
Okay. So it's possible that there's more coming in because you spent more this year. We're spending more this year.
But it's not necessarily linear.
It's never linear. It depends
Well, I
on
don't know,
your
it's just
state
somebody should look at it and there may be some more money there that isn't being accounted for, that's all.
Yeah, the key word there is that they're being.
Right, and whether there is or not, I don't know.
Yeah, and based on the formula, though, it's, I think what may be missing here is if we had a student that cost $300,000, we might be able to calculate a number. But if it's 4 students at $75,000, that's less than the 4 times the cost of a single student, so we'd get 0 additional on it. That's why the details really matter in terms of what
So,
that.
I mean, that's the fancy spreadsheet that you send into, basically by kid, right? I mean, it's on their website. It's not, it's not filled out, but the blank sheet is there, and it's got the name, rank, and serial number, and how much you spend per kid. You send in, right? And it's confidential and all that good stuff. Okay, so that's what basically drives the whole exercise.
Right, and
Yes?
it gives us a definitive number to use from year to year for out-of-district costs, doing it the way we do it and the state does it. I think what you're getting at, I'm still not clear what you're asking 100%. What we try to do when we're dealing with budgets that change depending on student enrollment and student needs is make sure we have an idea of what the actual costs are. If we start trying to do guesstimates, we could be out hundreds of thousands of dollars. That accompanied with the fact that we have students that move in during the year, some move out, and those costs are not predictable costs at times. So
Right,
we
but
spend
you have-
what we
you have
get
to-
in.
But you have to fill out that spreadsheet
Of course.
sometime.
Right.
Once you fill out that spreadsheet,
And every
It
year that we
goes in.
filled it out, we've never had a situation where, next thing we know, we found $75, $100, $150,000, and life has just all of a sudden turned into
Yeah.
a bed of roses.
Right.
It doesn't work that way, so I wouldn't be counting on that as any kind of strategy for closing a gap. I mean, we have to budget on what we know at the time, that's what we all do, and this is what we know at the time.
okay?
Kind of like Bonnie realizing $100,000, it's similar, just the timing, sometimes it works great, sometimes it doesn't.
Well, so, again, back to my question, when will you know what the number is?
After the next
October,
school
November?
year starts.
We said October, November.
Okay,
That's when we
before
work
town
out the
meeting?
numbers. Yes.
Before town meeting in May,
No.
No, before town meeting in
October?
October or November.
Depends on when the town meeting in October, November, I guess.
At the mercy of the state.
Okay,
Well, still, as a practical approach is doing something radical. Other things were being discussed.
What radical things were we discussing?
Not funding stabilization funds
We
and
didn't
things like
say
that.
not fund the stabilization account, we said reduce the amount of funding.
Okay.
By
Okay.
a very small.
Okay, I still say it's going against the financial policies and with the bond rating and so on. To me, that's just a
We don't know
non-starter.
for sure, like, everything we've done as a town.
Right.
We are, as far as in all the meetings I've heard,
Right.
we are like the gold plate of financial management relative to other communities. So the amount of money that we were talking about as a possibility, we just put it out there, we didn't say it was a good idea.
Right.
We didn't recommend it, we identified it as an opportunity that
Right.
may be less painful than the other things. It's harder for me to believe that after all the great things we've done, if we tweak our number by 115,000 on all the things we do, that it would even get noticed by council or a bond rating agency. Because all the other things are so terrific. They'd be patting you on the back, as they have, because we have the AAA rating.
It's all, I don't know, everything I've ever heard, they say it's all about following your policies, and besides, to me, this is not enough of a critical item that you would go down that path for this. We're gonna, at some point, the economy's gonna hit, and we're gonna have real hard decisions to make on some really big things. And to me, I just think there's other options still here.
We hope there are.
Well, and kindergarten, can we talk about that?
There's
Can we
always
talk about
options.
that?
Whoa, wait.
Or is that just not even an option?
We already showed up with $92,000.
I understand.
We have heard nothing on the town side to help. So why are we coming back at our stuff? We're not filling 2 positions. We are reductive now relative to level services and level staffing. Where's the acknowledgement of that? You want us to go reductive again? There has to be some acknowledgement that we've already come to the table and reduced the opportunity to do things that we already had funded and had staffed previously. Yes? Yes?
I acknowledge that right
Yes,
off the
Betsy,
bat.
yes?
For some things, yeah, sure.
Yeah, okay.
For sure.
Thank
But
you.
there are also things in there like the $20,000 savings in retirement. Well, that wasn't
That's
something
on the
in your
table.
budget.
Now, that's part of the
I know, but why wasn't it in the
92,000?
original budget? Why wasn't that in your
Because we
original
didn't know
budget?
that person filed retirement when we did the original budget.
Okay, all right, thank you then.
People retire at different times.
Yeah, I understand, I got it.
So we're working the
I don't
process.
know. I'm just making
And
sure
we
you
came
do.
to the table with a
Send it to me.
reduction. We are not level service and level staffed at that budget.
Okay.
I like to acknowledge them as being first to step up to help close the gap, and I accept that maybe there's a better way to get that remaining $105,000, whatever. By the way, I've also heard today, and I don't know, Fred, you probably did as well, there's potential that our health insurance number might be off by about 100,000 or so.
I hadn't heard that.
Okay, all right, well,
Misdirection.
not in the good direction, not having it accounted for some, so it's still gonna be a moving target, even if we close this piece of it, but, you know, but we might even be able to capture some of that possibility on the capital list. We might capture, I don't know where, I mean, there's different places, but, I think these folks have stepped up, though. I think we really need to start suggesting some things.
Here's the thing, none of the ideas that are being put on the table are good ideas. It was not a good idea for us to say, oh, well, we just won't fund 2 teacher's assistant positions. But we did it because we realized relative to the situation we're in, it's not a terrible decision. It's not good, but there are worse decisions we could have made. So at some point, we're gonna have to acknowledge if it's the things we put out as a possibility or the other things, none of them are good. But at some point, we're gonna have to make the least bad decision. And we're gonna have to understand that that's what it's gonna come down to. So when you say, I don't wanna do this and I don't wanna do that, that's meaningless. Nobody wants to do it. But we might have to do it anyway. And as soon as we come to that realization, it gets easier to get the work done.
Right. So, to where Fred was going earlier with the fall town meeting, I mean, there's some of these numbers, the school choice, or not the school choice, the special ed things, you don't, not even in terms of the reimbursement, but in terms of the actual expense, you don't really know what a lot of those are until you go through, right, in terms of the school year?
Our budget
true?
is like all budgets, it's a budget number, it's a snapshot
Right,
in time of
right.
the best information we have.
Right.
We get good news and we get bad news.
Right.
Sometimes it's good news, sometimes it's bad news.
Right.
When it's bad news, we don't come back to fall town meeting saying, you know what, we were wrong about that, we need more money.
Right.
We go find it through our revolving accounts, or we
Right.
find the efficiencies while we're spending during the year.
And we do have changes during the year with students going on a district that we brought in, or we've had them for a number of years, and for some reason, services need to change. Those are all mandatory costs. The tuition we pay for out-of-district students is no different than charter school students or Neshoba Tech students. It's all more money, because the
Well,
services are more
you know,
specialized.
But
But it's
you-
mandatory by
You
law.
deserve credit
course.
for building your reserves. I mean, you've gone, 8 or 10 years ago, 300,000, you've got $1.3 million sitting there now. It's 8% of your budget. Do you need an 8% reserve on your budget?
Well, I guess you could look at it, we've never had to come to fall town meeting and ask for money to pay for out-of-district costs.
Right, which might be $200,000 or $300,000 in a year
Depends on
that
the
you
year.
are saying it's a big spike. That's what that money's there for.
The last spike we've had was 2013, so we've had a pretty good run. It is unpredictable though, but what we're trying to do is make sure that when we budget, we stay within that budget and do everything we can so that we don't have to come back to a fall town meeting and ask for more money, which I think is to everybody's advantage.
Right, I mean, that's why you have reserves. I mean, back in the day, we didn't have them, and you had to come back.
But the point is if we are going to string the budget on the assumption that in fall town meeting, we're gonna have found an opportunity, we have now reduced our flexibility to do what we did this year, which was not have to worry about it, because we had the reserve in place. Because we had managed the budget, we get to May town meeting, we vote the number, we're good, we make it work. And now we're talking about conceivably violating that policy. Why is that any more palatable to us than violating another policy? Because one's written down in a nice printed up manual, and the other one is an agreement that we all had because we know it's the right thing to do? I don't think so.
Okay.
We're gonna have to do
Well, at the
something
end of-
we don't
well,
like.
At the end of the day, we'll make our recommendation, and it'll be what it is. I don't know what, if the selectmen can find the
At the end of the day, we
$100,000.
hope to all make a joint recommendation, how's that?
At the end, hopefully we will.
Yeah.
But the schools are getting, at this point, with the number, about $1 million, almost $1.2 million incremental.
Yeah, that's what it's gonna work out
We've heard the
to.
justifications too. I mean,
In the last 5 years, the town side's grown 34%,
Yeah,
and the school side's grown 18%.
yeah, and a big piece of that is the OPEB.
No, I took that
and
out, that
healthcare.
18% is non-OPEB. It's strictly on the operating budgets of the
fire
various
department
departments.
Yeah, okay. So a big piece of that is,
We're all one big happy family.
my big happy family.
These are small numbers, we can solve this.
All right.
Let's just close up shop for the night and go get a rest.
And don't forget, 630,000 of our budget increases for out-of-district costs,
Yeah.
which we can do nothing about. That's
So
what we
if,
have to do.
so the 130 is for out-of-district costs, so it should somehow, some of it should weasel its way back through the circuit breaker.
Eventually, yes.
I don't know how much,
Yes.
could be 5,000,
Not
it could be
enough.
100,000,
But
whatever, I don't
it's
know,
not
but it's gonna be
Be a
something.
windfall, it'll be some money.
Right, okay. I guess we've gummed this to death
Yeah.
for tonight.
We'll take our whack at it next Monday
Yeah.
night, specific to
Give
the
us your best-
capital list,
give
but
us your best
anything
shot.
else we can make progress on, obviously we will too.
We'll make our recommendations.
Yeah, and there's, well, hopefully, we'll be better informed before you make your recommendations on the
Yeah,
19th.
well, whatever.
I think we'll be able to find that money.
Okay.
Make a recommendation, make a motion that we adjourn.
Anybody?
Oh, I'll make that motion.
And second?
Second?
Do we go through member input first?
Yeah, probably, if you don't mind.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
It was a point of order, that's all.
Technically, it wasn't on the list, but we do it. Anything?
Oh, CPC,
CPC.
but, I don't, yeah, I mean, there's things, but, it just seems like we've been a long meeting tonight, so I don't know if we want to go through all that. But they got a list of things, the projects coming, good requests coming, and, working through it.
Okay,
Yep.
so do they have a timeline to make their recommendations? Because we need to vote that. And, it's coming up, and Bonnie's not gonna be around to hear the whole thing, so.
When is our next meeting? Let me look.
The 19th, and then the 2nd, and I won't be here.
No, I'm
so-
talking about CBC now, so, yeah. I know we have another one coming up. I don't know. I'll find out for you anyway, once
Yeah,
you go see,
that's
get
fine.
Alan, yeah.
Anything?
Space Needs, we got our architect, so,
And your OPM.
yeah, we got OPM, we got an architect. So I
Need more space. We don't have any
particularly
room
do
for
it with
new
either one
growth.
of them, but
Okay, anything else? We don't have any minutes.
We're on the CPC by ways with Board of Selectmen on the 11th.
where's our minute taker? What country is she in this week?
I don't know, she's off gallivanting, but she's cut a deal with Kirby to do the minutes off the tape. So she'll be doing the minutes, so. Okay.
Did we get our
Motion,
cut of their hourly salary?
You guys adjourn?
As
No.
previously moved
Make a motion that
for
we adjourn.
adjournment.
I have a
Second?
motion, a second, a third, and a
A
fourth.
third, yes.
All opposed? Any opposed? Okay, we're done. Thank
Okay.
you.